Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes. Welcome back to Connection Corner, where you send us your reviews, comments, and emails, and we read them back to you. Today's review comes in the form of a 5-star review from K Apple Pie.
K Apple Pie says, wealth of reproductive knowledge. I've learned so much from this podcast. Caitlin and Sophia are both super knowledgeable. They make the concepts engaging and not overwhelming. By far the best fertility podcast I listen to. If you want to learn more about your reproductive system and overall health, I would highly recommend this podcast. I love that because that's exactly what we're trying to do is take the complicated and distill it down to like the important and practical way to implement something.
Practical, right? Yes, that is what we want this to be for you. So it warms our hearts to know that it landed with you, K Apple Pie. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to another episode of Food, Freedom, and Fertility. You have your 2 all-star functional medicine nutritionists, dietitians in the fertility space. And today we have another dietitian on the show, which is so exciting. We have Catherine Staffieri. Did I say it right? She's a nutrition manager at Nutrisense, which is a kind of direct-to-consumer CGM company. You may not know what that means, and we'll explain it in this show. But instead of reading your bio, Catherine, can you just give us a little bit of an intro of who you are and how you ended up at Nutrisense?
Sure. I am a nutrition manager, as you said, at Nutrisense. I've been there for about 2.5 years. I think I was like the 20th employee. Definitely one of the, sort of original cast of dietitians that they hired. And this is actually a second career for me, being a registered dietitian. I used to work in finance and really realized that I was not enjoying my day-to-day, nor did I really want that to be my career down the line. So I felt really fortunate. I ended up going back to school, getting my master's in nutrition education. And then, as most dietitians know, you wear many hats after that. You work at a hospital, you have private practice, you do a bunch of, free webinars for people. Like, you just kind of do a bunch of stuff. And yeah. Passing out pamphlets, doing like nutrition education for kids, like you do it all, right? Sports education, I can do it all. And eventually I was like, it's hard to be by myself, and I really do enjoy working with other dietitians. And it was during pandemic times, kind of, just coming out of it. And I was like, let me see what's out there that's remote. I've got 3, gnarly children I got to take care of. I got to do all this stuff. So how can I do it all? And luckily I found Nutrisense, which was great. And I like to say that they taught an old dog some new tricks. And I've been really happy there ever since.
Cool.
Old dog, new tricks. Because how much information did you guys learn in your education to become a dietitian, or even in your internship, about CGMs, or frankly, like how big of a role blood sugar management plays out in hormonal health and wellness? Probably Sophia will have had more than you and I, Catherine.
Yeah. Well, and even then it was, so we're talking about my education leading into becoming a dietitian, which is like when I was at best year. And we didn't talk about blood sugar balance all that much. We really didn't. Especially, and I was sort of the rebel at the school because when I got there, it was a vegetarian campus. Like, they didn't serve meat on the campus. And I was the president of the carnivore club, which is like, we want to eat meat, like we can't do this. We maybe don't need it for every meal, but like, we need to eat meat. We can't live, because I lived on campus. Like, you can't be eating these like soured green beans and like garbanzos every single meal. It's not good. And so there was a shift while I was there to begin including sustainably sourced, responsibly sourced meat. And by the time I left, it was an omnivorous.
Look at you, change
cafeteria
maker.
and everything like that. But Yeah, no, I'm. Can I just say though, like I stepped in at just the right moment. Like the people that ran the club and everything before me was they did it all. I was just happened to take the helm at the moment that I was only president for like one semester because we disbanded because we're like, we did it. All right,
What
it's
about you,
here.
Catherine? What was your education around the idea of blood sugar balance, insulin resistance, and macronutrient compositions of food?
I mean, like little to none. So my master's program was in nutrition education. So it was much more about like, how to
Teaching.
assess readiness for change and counseling and like that kind of stuff. It was not a clinically based program. I mean, we spent like 2 semesters on MNT, medical nutrition therapy, like, hemoglobin A1C. I was like, what is that weird term? Like that was not a huge part of our training, and nor was a CGM. I don't even think that was like really out there. I mean, I think that the technology's been there, but certainly not for non-diabetics, right? Like that was just not even on
Yeah,
anyone's
I actually
radar.
remember having an intern with me because when I was in school, I don't think CGMs were very common at all. They were probably just emerging on the market.
It was only the only time I'd heard of it was for we had one athlete come. She was a competitive rower and she had type 1 diabetes. And she talked about what her life was like, being out on this boat and trying to,
Skid.
not boat, but I don't know, whatever the rower boat, I guess. Yeah, and trying to manage her blood sugar while rowing and everything like that. And she talked about that life. She had a CGM and a pump. And then we had another lady talk about type 1 diabetes in pregnancy. And she said immediately it's an insulin pump and a continuous glucose monitor. You get them both immediately in pregnancy, which is why when I wanted to use a continuous glucose monitor from Nutrisense when I was pregnant and they told me no, I was like, what the heck? I thought this was for pregnant ladies. But I'm realizing that lady that I've
Well, I think too, I mean, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but like someone with type 1 diabetes in pregnancy is a very different fish swimming in the ocean than you looking to learn more about your blood sugar management in pregnancy. It's like the difference between us keeping this person and baby alive and us zeroing in on things or maybe treating a condition. It's like just totally different things and a different market, essentially, really medical management versus continuing to grow more information and advocate better for yourself. But like I hardly heard anything. And I even remember sitting in my rotation, in my diabetes rotation with a certified diabetes educator, registered dietitian, and saying she asked, do you want to add anything to this counseling session? I was like, yeah, well, I just want to really bring up the fact that like I know that you're saying you struggle with eating candy in the afternoons and like you're hiding it in your purse and bringing it to work. But when I heard what you were eating for lunch, there was like no protein in your lunch. And I think if we just give you a little bit more protein at each meal, you're going to feel better and you're not going to crave as much sugar. This was a type 2 diabetic. And I remember the diabetes educator looking at me and saying, where's the research that backs that up? And I was like, is this not what this whole rotation's about? And I quickly realized that this in her 60s certified diabetes educator had even more like a annotated, very old perspective on diabetes management and blood sugar and insulin resistance. But just a sweeping example of 3 very highly educated nutrition professionals who in our nutrition education were really not taught the hallmark foundational, incredibly principle importance of blood sugar balance, and it touches everything. Like I was at a meeting yesterday for my daughter going into kindergarten, and the headmaster of the entire school was like, hey, by the way, don't send sugary things for snacks and make sure next to the crackers you send some protein. And I was like, the headmaster knows it. Like, why didn't the diabetes educator have an idea? So our listeners are like, yeah, girls, we've heard you talk about blood sugar balance every episode for the last 100 and so episodes. Like, you weave it into everything, but there's a reason. And today we have the nutrition manager for Nutrisense, which is a direct-to-consumer continuous glucose monitor. That's what a CGM stands for. Here to talk with us about like this technology and, aside from the company and the technology, the importance of blood sugar in this life stage that you're in right now. So welcome.
Thank you guys so much. And, to follow along with that, metabolic syndrome it was kind of something we touched on, right? Like, again, and one of the 5 tenets of metabolic syndrome is blood sugar management, right? Like, it's just as important as your HDL, your waist circumference. Like, these are those hallmarks, these longevity factors that are really important. And I feel like everyone's so focused on HDL and LDL, which, rightly so, fine. But equally of the 5 is blood sugar management. And, we can talk about it, but what you're getting, I can jump into it right now, but what you're getting from an annual physical is a fasting glucose, right? And maybe an A1C. And what does that tell you? It tells you like, oh, how are you doing on Tuesday morning? You're like, great. Okay. So that's Tuesday morning. Like, what about like the rest of the year, the rest of my time, how impactful is that? Really, what can my doctor discern from that? And how can I use that to live a longer life? I mean, you can't, it's not really great information.
Or how can I use this to solve the problems of today? Like, we're not even talking about living a longer life. Beautiful, wonderful. Who wouldn't want that? But we're talking about like what I see blood sugar doing. It's the problems of today. It's not even I want to get pregnant next cycle. That's even down the line. What about the anxiety you're experiencing today? What about the brain fog, the fatigue, the cravings, the insomnia? What about that you're having today? Because that could really be linked to your blood sugar, and it absolutely was for me. And the continuous glucose monitor helped me understand what I was doing that was contributing to that, and just the sensitivities that my body has. So before we get into like Caitlin and I's experiences, Catherine, can you describe like what is a continuous glucose monitor and how does it work? Just tell our audience, give us the Cliff Notes version of what we're even talking about here, please.
Totally. So we call it a CGM, continuous glucose monitor. Nutrisense uses the Freestyle Libre, the first version, a 14-day life, and it's a little circular disc. It's about the size of a quarter. It's got a little filament in it, and what you do is you insert it in the back of your arm, and it will continuously monitor the glucose in your interstitial fluid for the life of the sensor. So it's about 14 days. So it sticks on the back of your arm, and what you do is you then scan the sensor to your phone, and all of that data that the sensor is collecting downloads to your phone. Now you can download the Freestyle Libre app, and you can look at the data on their app, or you can download the Nutrisense app and sign up for our program, and we slice and dice the data, 7 ways to Sunday. So, that's the gist of what it is. There are other companies out there that also have CGMs, like a Dexcom, and it's all the same idea of a small little monitor inserted into your skin and continuously assessing the glucose in your interstitial fluid for the life of the sensor.
So what is interstitial fluid, and how does that differ from, if we're talking about blood sugar but we're measuring interstitial fluid? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Right. So, I mean, you're not like puncturing a vein to get your, a continuous blood sugar level. So, the filament's just going into your skin like a couple of centimeters. And what you would normally do,
a couple of millimeters, not centimeters.
Oh, sorry. Yes, millimeters. Yes, sorry.
A couple centimeters.
It's coming through the other side. Sorry.
You are scaring the pants off people right now. The needle folks
I think it might be
centimeters listening to this. No, it's definitely millimeters. It's small. Okay, all right. Caitlin's doing a fact check.
I don't have a good comparison in my brain for the length. It's truly a filament. Like maybe it's the length of like the tip of your finger. Maybe that's
right.
a good
5 millimeters long. You're right.
yeah, a thick thread, like a cannula, like a sort of a little bit of flexibility to it. It's not like a steel needle in your arm all the live long day. And that's what I've heard people be really worried about is they're like, I just can't have that like in my skin all the time. And it's not.
No.
That's
They
not
can't do
what's
that,
in
but
your
they'll
arm
put
all
an
the time.
IUD in NuvaRing. I mean, this is like, in my mind, this is like one of the least invasive
Right.
things you're asked to do as a human.
Yeah, I feel like flossing your teeth
A
is more
CGM.
invasive
Okay,
than
so we've plugged.
just
It's not as
using a
scary as it
glucose monitor.
seems.
Not at all. And I would say, frankly, most of the time people forget that it's there and they knock it off by accident. And they're like, oh, shoot, I got to get another. Like, you forget that it's cause on the back of your arm and you're like not looking at it. So, so that's the CGM. And it's measuring your glucose in little increments, like every 5 minutes. And so when you download that data, again, like I said before, when you do a finger stick, you asked about a blood, like what's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're taking a finger stick or when you're getting a lab draw for your annual physical, or if you're in the, hospital for whatever reason, right? That's your blood glucose level, which again, it should sort of match up. We compared like a train, like your blood glucose level is like the front of the train. And then as the glucose goes through, it finally gets to the interstitial fluid, which is like it kind of has to go through that area. So there's a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
lag time if you wanted to compare your CGM value to your finger stick value. But that's really otherwise there's no difference in what it's measuring.
Here we are wearing this thing on your arm. Okay, so can you kind of walk us through the process? Like how does this go?
First, you go to Nutrisense and you get a CGM through us. If I have to put my marketing hat on, that's where you go first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Nutrisense.io, and you go through our process. You answer our questionnaires. We will not accept people who are dosing insulin, right? So if you are a type 1 diabetic and you're using insulin, that you are not it's not a great program for you. So also if you are pregnant, also if you are pregnant, and if you have if you're currently dealing with an eating disorder, this is not the right program for
Smart.
you either.
Yeah, I mean, and it's self-report on all of this. And so if say don't really.
Yeah, I can't say that I haven't advised someone on the loopholes and how they might, choose to
Mm-hmm.
not.
Share parts of their life that are reflective of what a doctor might like.
Well, here's the deal. You could go to your doctor and say, I want to see Jim. They're like, we just don't really do that. It's not FDA approved since the last time I've checked in pregnancy. However, I think that it's a heck of a lot more helpful real data than just going and taking a 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test. So Nutrisense isn't going to give you one if you tell them you're pregnant.
Oh,
your doctor
sure.
may or may not give you one if you're pregnant. Share that information if you want. If you have an eating disorder or you're using insulin, you should not be using Nutrisense. Talk with your doctor.
Right.
Or if you have a history of an eating disorder, like maybe you are well recovered, but I mean, think of what is your life right now in your recovery with your eating disorder? Can you happily wear like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch and not be like looking at your steps and tracking your water, tracking your calories? Like, can you eat things without being like, how much butter was in this? Like, how far are you into recovery? Like, can you eat a meal that somebody prepared for you where you had no control over how much butter or cheese was in it and like eat it, enjoy it, move on? Or is your brain sort of spinning about it still? Maybe you're not actively doing the behaviors that were causing you to be so sick when you were in your active eating disorder, but is your brain still getting triggered and stuck when it comes to these things quite a bit, or enough more than is comfortable? Then I would not recommend you do this because it's going to be giving you perpetual data about what food is doing. And if that's really triggering for you, it's not healthy for you then. I would rather you find other ways to manage your blood sugar than this, because this is going to take you to a place that's not healthy. And disordered eating isn't healthy. I don't care if you had beautiful glucose or whatever the hell when you were disordered eating. I don't care how your body looked or whatever, metrics of health, that wasn't healthy. And so we don't want you to go back to that place or encourage that sort of thinking, because that thinking is a prison. We don't want to send you to jail. I'm saying this as someone who's been there.
It's good we're talking about this, but you go to Nutrisense.io, you answer the questions, you don't meet the exclusion criteria, and so you're going to pay for it and they're going to send you one. What happens next?
Yep. So you get 2 CGMs in the mail because our plans are based on months. And so as the life of the sensor's 14 days, 2 sensors make up a month. You can unbox it and you can apply your CGM. Doesn't matter what day, what time, anything like that. And you can do it yourself. You can have a friend help you. Some people really find the part, the real insertion, scary, but you literally don't feel it. I think people are very nervous.
It's nothing.
It's really nothing.
I've had a more painful high five in my life. Yeah. The finger stick is way worse. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Way worse. So you insert it on the back of your arm, and you download our app, and then you activate your sensor. It takes about an hour for everything to align, and then you are off to the races. And every time that you scan your phone to the back of the sensor, the data will download, and then our app really takes it in many different ways. You can just get your plain, glucose levels, but you can overlay it with all kinds of additional data. You can log your meals, you can log your exercise. It syncs with a Garmin, a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, all that stuff. You can overlay, which is really something that we're pushing now, which is really interesting, a lot of your mood. You can overlay stress.
Which is huge, as you'll hear as we go through this.
Yes, absolutely. So that's really the exciting thing is that it's really great data, but what you're putting on top of the data to help sort of see the patterns and trends that emerge, that's the actionable items. Exactly. And then really the best part is the dietitian. So you get a complimentary, your first month is complimentary with dietitian support, and that is a highly trained individual. We have the smartest people out there besides you guys, out there talking about glucose, and we've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of data. We've seen all kinds of wacky things, regular things, normal things, abnormal things. We've seen it all. We've done a ton of research. We're constantly learning. So you get someone that is dialed into you, that is looking at just your data, that is offering you, insights and, hey, did you notice this? Hey, I want to explain this to you. So you really have an accountability partner. You have someone there to motivate you, to educate you, to be a friend, to be a peer, all of that kind of stuff. So that's what I think is really the best part of this, is that you're not doing it by yourself. You're not what does this mean? Of course, if I have a banana, my glucose might go up, but what else?
Or even questions you have about the food that you ate, because you can be like, I had this coconut water and it didn't do this, but then I had this brand of coconut water and it did. And then the dietitian can be like, did you look at the can? Because this one actually has much more added sugar. And you're like, oh, there we go. Okay. Mm-hmm. And can kind of help you understand how this is all coming together. So you're not just scratching your head going, man, why was my blood sugar so low in the middle of the night? The person you're working with can be like, I noticed that too. Well, let's talk about it. And you can sort of unpack that together to figure out what happened.
That's exactly right. Yep.
When you think about overall health, actually, I have a question. Before I ask my question, let's take a break and hear from one of our sponsors.
We're taking a break to talk about our sponsor, Fertility Cloud. In working with hundreds of you ladies, we have noticed a problem that has come up. I know it's come up for me, Caitlin. It's come up for your clients as well. And that is not only finding a doctor who is going to know how to help you, but one that wants to. We have a lot of issues here, and sometimes getting a simple blood test or actually getting a medication or talking to someone who's actually an expert
infertility can not only take an insane amount of time, but it can feel like you're fighting your doctor.
Yeah, or you're playing like Russian roulette to get in front of somebody who actually cares. We are so excited to be partnering with Fertility Cloud because they have a solution for all of these frustrations. Just last week, I had a client that needed right now care, and we couldn't get her in front of an OB. And she got a same day appointment with Fertility Cloud and spoke to a reproductive endocrinologist and had a prescription that she needed in her hand hours later. This is a solution that our industry desperately needs, and we are so excited to present to you.
So if you're in a remote area and you have to drive 4 hours to go see a doctor, or if you've been to multiple doctors and none of them seem to really listen or really care or want to take an approach that works for you, start up with My Fertility Cloud.
My Fertility Cloud has provided us a link, so check it out in the show notes. That will get you $25 off your first visit with one of their providers.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk about one of our sponsors, the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
We love the Prenatal Nutrition Library. It's a searchable database and app, which means you have answers within seconds and peace of mind that what you're eating during pregnancy is both safe and nutritious.
It's almost like having your own personal pregnancy dietitian in your back pocket that's going to not only tell you, is it safe to eat this? How much of that should I have? Yada, yada, yada. But give you actual meal plans so you know how to put it all together onto your plate today. And the meal plans are trimester specific, meaning, some women are kind of nauseous in their first trimester and maybe they need specific foods to help combat that. Prenatal Nutrition Library has got you covered. Or the fact that your baby's brain is growing rapidly in your third trimester and you need your nutrition to support that. Prenatal Nutrition Library meal plans has got you covered there too.
This is evidence-based information. Registered dietitians are in this app weekly answering members' questions. There's an exclusive podcast within the app that's run by Ryan, who is the prenatal dietitian that founded this entire thing. It's a wealth of knowledge and resources and will take you far beyond that one-page handout your doctor handed you that actually probably has out-of-date information about eating in pregnancy.
So head on over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library as soon as you get your big fat positive. Well, okay, first message me and Caitlin so we can do a happy dance with you. Then head over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library to get clear strategies to meet your nutrient needs, as well as to take the stress out of confirming what's safe and most optimal for you and your baby while you're pregnant. Use code FFF20 for 20% off.
We are back from our break. I was recently with someone who I shall not name, but they may or may not have been my spouse, at their annual physical. And this unnamed individual that was probably, my other half, had an A1C that wasn't really pretty. It was a 5.8. And fasting blood glucose was 101. And the doctor was just like, no big deal. And I was like, that's not no big deal. That's pre-diabetic, actually, if you're looking at either one of those factors. And the doctor had a lot to say about numerators and denominators and anemia and how this or that may have skewed this. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Dad just had a heart cath. Mom has metabolic syndrome too. High A1C and high fasting blood glucose. Gentleman's been exercising and eating well and isn't losing weight. There's insulin resistance here. Whether you want to call it that or not, we have insulin resistance. So we got to do something about it. And it just struck me that it took his dietitian wife, who hangs out with blood sugar stuff all day long, to come to the appointment to make the doctor make a bigger deal about what the data was actually showing us. And not everybody has that in-home advocate that's educated in the same way. And all the time, I think doctors are not sharing what we actually see in research, that insulin resistance can cook for years before it catches up to A1C and fasting blood glucose. So can we talk just a little bit about how A1C and fasting blood glucose might be different than what we're monitoring in a CGM, and how we might take that data and kind of extrapolate or do different things with it?
I agree with, I guess, sort of both you and your doctor that the A1C is not, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect measurement because there are things like the life of the red blood cell. Maybe yours aren't exactly a lot, have that 3-month lifespan. It's not a perfect measure. Maybe you have other factors that, are playing a role in the glycation of your red blood cells. Fine, right? So we do use that as an interesting criteria, but really we're looking at almost the trend of your A1C, right? So it's like, is it going up? Is it going down? So, it's a data point, and it's an interesting data point. Is it the be all end all? No, right? And your fasting glucose, again, it's that, how was your husband doing on Tuesday morning? Like, okay, maybe he'd had a really low carb meal the night before, and that's what it is. Maybe it had a really high carb meal. Maybe he slept really well. Maybe he had exercised before he went. Maybe he was stressed out because he was missing work to go to the doctor. Like, there's so many factors that can impact where your glucose is in any one moment in time. Like, where did you catch him on his day? And so for us, when you get that continuous glucose, you're not just looking at one moment in time, right? And even if you're doing a finger stick, like before a meal and after a meal, like 2 hours after, you might have a delayed glucose response that's 4 or 5 hours later. Like, that's what you want to see. You're missing so much data if you're just getting that one moment in time. So what you're seeing, like, what we love to look at is like, what's your 14-day average glucose? What's your 14-day fasting glucose, what we call our morning average? What's your 14-day, overnight average? Like, what's happening to you overnight? What's your meal score? What's your typical breakfast meal score? What's your typical lunch meal score? Side note, you can see how this can be triggering for some people. Like, there's so much data, you have to be ready to absorb and take in that kind of data and be willing
and
to
make
take
healthy
some
choices
action
with it, and not
Correct.
go down the rabbit hole.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we really think is super interesting is seeing those patterns. And what I love to talk about is not just a meal score or like, hey, obviously when you had that bagel, but it's like you said with the coconut water, it's like, well, if you really love coconut water, let's find a way for you to have coconut water in the best way possible. Are you having it before a workout or after a workout to replenish your electrolytes? Like, are you having the full bottle? Are you having half of it? Are you having it with protein? Are you having it by itself? Like, did you eat before you work out? Like, all of those factors play into having the foods that we like. And I really like to emphasize that we come to this with an approach of liberalizing. A lot of women come to use Nutrisense and they have lots of restrictions that they've imposed, and we try and help people liberalize what they're doing, right? Like, let's find a way to enjoy ice cream. Let's find a way to enjoy your date night with your husband every week. Like,
and let's see if exactly, like, if ice cream even is the culprit, if that's even what the issue is for you. Because I mean, we can go into Caitlin and I's individual experiences, but I learned some things about ice cream in particular when I used the continuous glucose monitor, and so did Caitlin. Ice cream in particular was a food that we looked at.
And I think also particularly for women we just touched on it for a second too, is the stress factor, that it is a real silent factor in our health. And I don't know that women understand what physical toll it takes on your body. And I know obviously you're talking to your audience about fertility, about pregnancy, stuff like that. Like, that is such a huge factor in your health. And how do we measure that? There's no physical measure of stress. I mean, but this is a way
I'd say your fertility is a pretty good measure of it, but yeah.
yes, your body is responding whether you want to listen to it or not, right? And this is a really incredible, I like to compare the CGM to like a window inside your body. Like, you can really see what's happening in your body real time. Like, that's pretty cool. And if you're open to it, you can make changes based on that data.
And so, and it doesn't even have to be incredibly painful changes. And you get to be in charge of your own life. And so you get to learn which foods, which food combinations, which times of day, like, work for you and which ones don't. And you get to decide when it's worth it and when it isn't. Like, for me, like, I had some corn tortillas, right? And my blood sugar went up to like 135 immediately after eating them. I had like one corn tortilla, and it was mixed into a enchilada casserole with tons of ground beef and vegetables. And so anyway, the corn tortilla was a problem for me. It made my blood sugar go up to about 135, which is not a bad immediately post eating blood sugar. The issue for me is that after it went down into the low 50s, which is a pretty low blood sugar. So for me, I saw this corn tortilla was not the deal for me. This didn't help. I had a similar experience with white rice that I was eating in a different dish. And so I learned white rice, corn tortillas, these affect my blood sugar. Not that it makes me have insulin resistance, but have a low blood sugar afterwards. And then I'm like struggling to kind of get back on my feet after this low blood sugar. I'm sort of riding this wave of like, then it goes high and then it goes low again and low again and low again. And so what the point that I'm making here is, do I care much about a corn tortilla? In this situation, I kind of didn't. Like, I could have taken it or left it, and that meal wasn't really worth it for me. But you just sort of learn that, like, okay, if I'm just hungry on a Wednesday afternoon, the corn tortilla, the white rice, not really the best choice for me to make. And if I don't love these foods and they're not like significant and special and worthwhile in that time, it's going to contribute to the uncomfortable feelings and symptoms that I have later in the day. And so I learned, I don't really want to eat this, randomly. I'm going to save this for when it's really worth it for me to feel how I feel when I eat this. Mm-hmm. So it's not like looking at this data for like, okay, if you have an important meeting, if you are going to be traveling, if any of the stressful or important moments that happen in a woman's life, maybe don't have the thing causes some of the problems you might be experiencing, so that you can go into the important moments of your life energized and focused. And it's not that you're never going to eat the corn tortilla, that you're never going to have sushi again because you can't eat the white rice. It's that that that's not like a healthy random choice for you, and you'd be better served to have something you like just as much that doesn't send your blood sugar reeling. And that's really, it gives you the power to choose and to take care of yourself so that you don't have to experience the uncomfortable symptoms that I was experiencing, that you might experience when you are doing what a normal person would do. Like, it's not like I'm eating Skittles for breakfast. It was a corn tortilla with other healthy things in it that should balance my blood sugar. So it just helps you understand that, like, what actually impacts you and how it impacts you. So you can choose. You can make a choice that works for you. If it's worth it, if it's not, you decide.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And we like to say you wearing the CGM is an N=1 experiment, right? If any of your listeners are familiar with looking at like PubMed and like reading through all the research stuff,
yeah,
right?
It's a sample size of one.
Yeah, exactly. It is you. It is your body and what you are going, your lean body mass makeup and your stress levels and your sleep. Like, it is not me, right? There's no perfect ideal glucose pattern that we're looking for. We are just trying to find out what works best for you and your lifestyle so that you can enjoy and feel empowered. I mean, that's the key word here, is that we're not looking to diminish anything. We're not looking to take anything away from anyone. We're looking to empower people so that they feel their best on a day-to-day basis, like tomorrow,
Yeah, exactly. And impact your fertility and live longer. But we're talking about the way you're going to sleep tonight. And we're talking about how you're going to feel in that meeting tomorrow. We're talking about what's happening now. And listeners, I'll just, spoiler alert, give you some of my experience here, is that when I would have higher carb dinners, or higher carb, especially my nighttime snack, because I'm a breastfeeding mother here, so I need a snack before I go to bed. And it's so easy to be like, oh, the kids are in bed. Let's eat these like popcorners, chips, or have some dessert type things like pie or whatever else you want to have, because you don't have to share it with your kids right now. And it feels so good to sit and eat a snack and watch a show. So I would eat snacks that were like carb rich. I wouldn't, again, not like bowl of M&Ms, but like some sweet sometimes in it, or savory, but it's like chips or something that's like very high carb. My blood sugar would continue to go up after I went to sleep. Again, probably reaching maybe, I think the highest one hit like 145 after eating a bunch of like chips and cottage cheese. And the issue was my blood sugar dropped into the 30s in the night, into the 30s. And I can tell you that night, you know what happened? A great night's sleep. No, wrong. Woke up for no reason, had to pee, was hot, could not cool off, was trying to do all the things to get back to sleep, too hungry to sleep, have to eat a snack, can't get comfortable, feeling itchy, like all of this, up from like 2:30 to 5. It was like this huge chunk of time that I was just awake and restless in the night, and then finally got back to sleep. And so if I hadn't known, if I hadn't been wearing this glucose monitor and looked at it the next day, I would not have known that my blood sugar is what was making me wake up, because my body's like, you're dying. It being like 35 is a super low blood sugar. So my blood sugar's low, my body wakes up because of it, and I can't get settled and go back to sleep no matter what. I'm taking like sleepy time herbs and stuff and like still not going back to sleep. So for me, the middle of the night insomnia that I've experienced many times in my life, light bulb moment. This is my blood sugar. I know that now if I'm going to need to get a good night's sleep because I've got something going on the next day, I can't just eat pie and ice cream before bed. I can't do it. I'm going to have a low blood sugar in the night and I'm going to feel like doo-doo. So that helped me put those pieces together. And so you can understand. And if I'm testing my blood sugar, even if you're using like the finger sticker and you test your 1 hour, you test your 2 hour, that's not going to tell me at, when was it that I said I woke up like 2:30 in the morning? My snack was at like 9:30 at night. So it was many hours, 5 hours later that I'm having this super low blood sugar. So I'm not going to be testing my blood sugar at 2 in the morning unless I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor and it's telling me data about the meal that I had 5 hours ago. Very valuable and really unattainable any other way.
I totally agree. And hopefully your dietitian told you that, we are less sensitive to insulin at night, right? So regardless of whether it's pie and ice cream or chips or whatever, your body just can't process carbohydrates as well at night as it can during the day. I mean, there's this whole fascinating area of chrononutrition, right? Of like, like have your pie and ice cream, but frankly, have it before dinner. Like you're going to do better if you eat it earlier in the day,
directly after your fiber and protein rich dinner.
Right, yeah. Right. Because it's going to hit you. Your body just can't work on it. Plus you're sedentary afterwards, right? Like you're eating that at 9:30 and then are you going out for like a 1 mile jog afterwards? Like, of course not. Like, you're going to relax and maybe do a couple things and, go to bed. So your body's not even using up what's coming in. So there's all these ways that, again, we're not saying you can never have pie and ice cream, but let's find a better way for you to have pie and ice cream. Let's find a better way for you to have the things that you really enjoy in your life.
I'm all about not having so many food rules and this and that. But I just have to also say we have completely normalized eating crap all the time. We just have. We have completely normalized. I was just talking with someone this morning. I was like, you know what it would have taken to make that pie before? Like, you want that nice pie crust? Somebody had to milk a cow, skim the cream, turn it into butter, take the grain, thresh it, grind it, have flour to make the pie crust. That's just the crust. Then you had to go pick the berries. Did you make the maple syrup? Did you hit the tree, get the maple syrup out, boil it to have the sugar, or did you walk to town to get the sugar? We live in a completely different time where you can just go into the grocery store to the freezer section and Marie Callender has a berry pie for you. And we've completely disengaged from the amount of effort it takes to make a pie, frankly. I know there's a bunch of homesteaders out there. I'm not talking to you, okay? Everyone else.
And Homesteader, get the heck out of here, all right? You don't have a sugar cane that you're grinding.
Okay.
You bought
Okay.
that
But
sugar,
do you see
and
what I'm
I
saying?
know
And
it.
I think you should be able to eat a piece of pie and have ice cream. I don't think you should be doing that every day. And if you're here listening because you have PCOS or you're struggling to get pregnant, I'm talking to you. Maybe we need to renormalize what really is normal to eat.
I agree. I fully agree with that. Yeah, it's very true. Not every meal and not every day needs to be a celebration of feasting. That's not healthy. And we've started doing that in this country with extremely palatable food that's
And
extremely
nutrient poor.
available and nutrient poor. Yeah, and we've just got kind of given in to our baser instincts. Like, yeah, we're pleasure seeking. Like, that's how our species has survived. But now when it's possible to have all pleasure all the time, it messes with us. That's why we're seeing like so much depression and anxiety too, because we're not supposed to be having so much dopamine for so little work all the time. And just, anyway, we could go on and on, but Caitlin, you're exactly right with this.
Yeah.
And you will see this wearing a glucose monitor, that having dessert for every meal or having spicy Doritos, or mine weren't even, they were like the healthy whole grain popcorn or chips, still a grain based product that's been refined because it's like popped and stuck together or whatever. Highly palatable treat. And it's so easy, just inhale a whole bag of them.
Yeah. And I think one of the helping that you guys are doing and that Nutrisense is that, again, hopefully it's not a triggering thing, but you have an accountability partner there. You have someone that's watching out for you and can help you make those better decisions. We do get
and
a lot of
help you
people
understand. Yes.
Exactly. We do get a lot of people that are like, you know what, I didn't know if I was totally ready to make these changes, but I felt like someone was there, like watching over me, like in a benevolent way, like not in a judgmental way, but like, hey, let me help you make some changes. Or also, when you are a highly stressed individual, and I have yet to meet a woman that says she's not stressed. You're balancing XYZ number of things, taking care of who knows how many people, in all manners. But, when you get home at the end of the day, you kind of want to take care of yourself. And sometimes that means, sitting with the pie and ice cream. So it's trying to change those behaviors that have maybe become, part of your lifestyle since COVID, before, like pandemic, like all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How do you change that behavior change? Well, you have a professional there to help you, and you can do it in small ways. Like maybe tonight we don't have that, but you can have it tomorrow night, right? Like try and change your behavior slowly. But what the benefit is that you get the real-time feedback of that behavior change, right? Like you don't get that necessarily if you're just following some influencer.
Immediate gratification.
You immediately see like, wow, I did so much better last night. And to your point, I might have slept better, but like I can see the data that I benefited from this behavior change. And that's really powerful for people that feel frustrated with weight loss or frustrated with wherever their health goals are. All of a sudden you're seeing progress, like your body's changing because of the decisions you make. And that's powerful.
That is powerful. So Caitlin, can you talk to us? I know you told me and your audience briefly, but you had a non-food blood sugar experience with when you were wearing the continuous glucose monitor.
One of the times that I wore it, the first time I wore it, I was pregnant and I had 2 small children already and was at a doctor appointment where one of my children was sick. We were at a new doctor and they were trying to force me to do an immunization on my sick child. And I was just like, no. And they were like, we have a no. Basically, we're big stupids and we don't have brains and we can't think. And so you have to do it. And that's just our policy. And I was like, well, I'm not going to give my sick, feverish child an immunization and challenge their immune system right now. We'll be back. I'm happy to do it. We're not doing it today. And I literally had to fight. And you don't want to find me in a dark alley. I'm a really kind person, but don't fuck with me, really, frankly. And especially mama bear me. And So anyway, we left the doctor's office and I watched in real time with the CGM what that interaction, the stress, the kind of like stirring up the adrenaline and all the impacts of that fight or flight stress response raised my blood sugar more than anything else I did in an entire 2-week period. None of the food I ate, none of the desserts I ate. I took my kids to go get ice cream after we did re-see the doctor and get immunizations. Blood sugar didn't go up nearly as high with anything that I was doing as when I was in that stressful situation. And that to me was like a really eye-opener. I know I've talked about it on the podcast before too, but I was also realizing that putting my kids to bed at night and then working, like even just answering emails or going on Facebook in my Find Fertility course and answering questions, which is fun for me. I enjoy doing that. I was watching my blood sugar go up nights that I did that versus nights that I didn't do that. So I learned 2 things. Stress is a huge impact on my blood sugar, and working at night engages a same type of stress response, even if I enjoy it, even if I'm not mentally stressed out by it. It's doing something inside of me biochemically that is impacting my blood sugar. And you know, pregnancy is an interesting state to do these studies in. I did continuous glucose monitors after, didn't have a fight with the pediatrician, but saw similar responses in stressful moments, even outside of pregnancy, or working late at night, or just staying up late at night and watching what that did to my blood sugar. And so, you know, I think a lot of people are like, you know, Caitlin and Sophia, they're telling us to eat more protein and more fiber and more whole foods and, you know, the things we tell you that aren't sexy, that are important and that you should continue to try and layer in little by little. But the things that I think we aren't talking enough about as a larger portion of a healthcare community is how stress and other things impact your blood sugar and what that is doing in the entire ecosystem of your health. And everybody tells you, like, just relax and you'll get pregnant, as if, first of all, telling someone to do that actually causes that. But if we're talking about stress versus a nervous system that is well regulated, a body that's set up to handle just the normal stressors of life in the day versus a body that's kind of teed up, like the bucket is close to the top and anything poured in is going to make it overflowing. Blood sugar is a piece of that. And you may not eat something and think, oh, my body's stressed out right now, but it very well could be. And so seeing how things like poor quality sleep, stress, or even illness impact your blood sugar can be incredibly eye-opening. And it's something I really wouldn't have seen or known without a CGM, because my A1C is fine and my fasting blood glucose is fine. And the things that the doctor is offering me are fine. The same doctor, I will say, I'll give him a little credit. Same doctor with this other half of mine who shall not be named, who we went and did a visit with about a week ago, was like, I'll give you a prescription for a CGM. Like, I'll just give it to you. Go check it out. Download the app on your phone and, you know, go ham with it. And so I think in the medical community, it's becoming a little bit more utilized in a broader population, somebody that doesn't have a diabetes diagnosis.
Caitlin, that is awesome. Let's
and like,
take a little break
go do
and
what you
right
want with
in.
that information. Let me give you access to that. And yet just the larger conversation about these things, frankly, isn't happening early enough for most people. But I remember sitting in my education and hearing that by like 2030, which is not very far from around the corner, we're going to need dialysis stations like we have gas stations, because type 2 diabetes and other things that impact kidney health, that progress kidney health, you know, the lack thereof, are going to lead to just incredibly crippling medical conditions, physically, financially, both for you, for our country. Like this really is a very I don't know the word. It's an epidemic that we have to get ahead of. And I think Nutrisense is a really unique opportunity to just advocate for yourself, get information, get hooked up with a health care practitioner like an RD, and gain some insights about your health that you can actually do something about. Hey guys, we're taking a break from our episode, and I want to talk about something that's super confusing. When you head down the supplement aisle and you're looking for a prenatal, and on the prenatal bottle itself, it says, do not take if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding. Like, what the heck?
It says talk to your doctor if you are pregnant, could be pregnant, breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever. And every supplement has this. You go down the supplement aisle, you go shopping on whatever supplement website, and there's a disclaimer on every bottle of every single thing, which means that everything that you've been taking your whole life long is now a big question mark about whether or not you are potentially harming yourself by taking something where you're trying to be healthy. So that is why we partnered with Needed. Needed is a perinatal nutrition supplement brand that has a wide array of products specifically designed for women who are pregnant, trying to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or postpartum. So it's not just that these products like can work if you're in that situation, or oh, it's probably okay if you take it while you're trying to conceive. No. These products are researched, they are formulated, and they are put together specifically for women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum.
This answers so many questions. I always get asked, like, what can I take? It's cold and flu season. What's safe? Needed has an immune support. That's safe whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant. It's even safe for your little ones.
And it's not just immune support. They've got collagen. They've got hydration support. They have digestive support. They have prenatal multi. They even made a line for dudes.
Needed is somebody we're really proud to be partnering with. So head over to their website and use code FFF20 for 20% off your order. Okay, Catherine. So I can go to the doctor and get a prescription. What's the difference? I mean, I can't just walk into CVS and get a CGM like a Freestyle Libre without a prescription. So how is Nutrisense doing this? How is this like a direct-to-consumer option?
Right. We're writing the prescription on our end for you. So you don't have to come to us with any type of, pre-existing condition or a doctor's referral or anything like that. So we take care of all of that on our end. And I have to say, based on what you were just talking about, you can download the Freestyle Libre, and as you know what the app looks like it's an interesting line.
And there's not much there.
There's no actionable item.
But there's not much there, and unless you're scanning it, you won't get the data in between scans with their software either. It's really frustrating. So unless you get the data, it's almost like finger pricks. You get the data points as you're pricking your finger, and unsilenceable alerts waking you up all the livelong day. And that's fine, because if you have type 1 diabetes and your blood sugar's 35, as mine went, I don't have type 1 diabetes. That is like, hey, you might be dying. Please wake up and go drink some juice because you're not okay. And so this thing will be beeping like a truck backing up through your living room. And it's like the craziest alarm all the time.
Yes. So while your doctor may prescribe the sensor, what Nutrisense has done is created an app, and beyond an app, an experience where you can get a free month of, and then you can choose to continue to pay for that practitioner support, right? It's not like they just drop you off, but it is a pay to play at that point.
Yep. And we offer weekly webinars where you can, hop on. We teach you how to use the app. We have a different topic every week that you can join for the life of your whole subscription. You can go to those for free every Thursday. Our app has so much content built into it that you can just learn on your own and take your data with you for the rest. I mean, you can share it with your doctor if your doctor's into that kind of stuff. Like, I have a ton of people, members that I've helped, and they are like, oh my God, my doctor's seeing this. It's so cool. This is so great. I've changed my medication because of this. I'm so happy, all this kind of stuff. So it can be a real partnership across many levels.
Yeah. As a dietitian, I love to see this kind of thing, and for people to really understand in real time how things are impacting them. because it's like we've been talking about again and again, like for me, the insomnia, there was also anxiety issues that I was having. Lo and behold, low blood sugar. I'm having low blood sugar, but I've just become so accustomed to this. I've been doing this for so long. My blood sugar goes low so frequently that I just kind of, I'm used to feeling that way. And so my body's trying to alert me in other ways. And anxiety was one of them. And my midwife actually pointed out, she's like, so low blood sugar, like it starts off with hangry, shaky, like that's how it feels. But if you are consistently having it and ignoring that, years down the line, it'll just start becoming consistent anxiety. And then you keep ignoring that, years down the line is when your thyroid starts to shut down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know so many people that have followed pretty much that exact trajectory. And this is me, a dietitian who eats fiber, who eats protein. I don't have a meal without protein. Get out of here with that, always. But I'm sensitive to things, and I need to have the right amounts, and apparently not corn tortillas, because I'll have a low blood sugar afterwards. And you just learn what's worth it and what's not, and kind of understand some of these symptoms that you've been having. So if you are sitting there listening to this and you have been having low progesterone, if you've been having anxiety and you've been having insomnia, I am telling you, your blood sugar is probably a huge piece of that. It might not be that it's going so high all the time. I never had a reading over 145 ever. But my blood sugar would drop really low afterwards. So it's not always that you're insulin resistant in the way that you typically would see. So you might go to the doctor and they're like, what, girl, look at you. Your fasting glucose was 68 and your A1C is like 4.6. Like, you look great. This is great. Everything's great. And meanwhile, you're having low blood sugars all the live long day. You're just so used to feeling this way that your body just triggers it and alerts you with anxiety and insomnia and a difficulty getting pregnant.
Catherine, one thing that I thought was interesting about Nutrisense when I used it was, I looked at it initially with my training and was like, my blood sugar, I know I have insulin resistance, but my blood sugar stays within range. And then the thing that the dietitian alerted me to was this idea of, but what's the difference between your pre-meal and your post-meal? Like what's that change that's happening? Like, they were both good, but what amount of change was there? Can you talk a little bit about the concept behind that and what you guys like to see or recommend?
Yeah, so we start out with we were talking about perfect glucose and stuff like that. We just have a default range in our app of 70 to 140, right? So again, if you are coming to us with a condition like a type 2 diabetes that has been uncontrolled for a long time, we can adjust that up, right? We can really adjust the app to meet you wherever you are. So if it's very restricting to see 140, you're consistently much higher than that. Fine. Well, we can adjust it up and aim for something under 180, right? But for someone who doesn't have a pre-existing condition, absolutely. So we're trying to keep it under the 140. Great. What if you're always under 140? You're like, well, aren't I fantastic, right? So that's why we have all of these other metrics, and we start to look at what I like to talk about is glycemic variability. That's the change in your glucose over time. And frankly, that's what we really see as the proxy for insulin resistance. That's when people start talking about insulin resistance, and we're like, well, we're not going to look at your baseline glucose. Yes, that's interesting, but let's look at the swings in your glucose or the delta in your glucose. And we have a delta variable that we measure, but we also have a recovery variable. And it's that recovery, it's the body's ability to process what you're taking in and get you back to the baseline that, it is a marker, right? Like, what's really happening inside when you're taking in the corn tortilla, when you're taking in some sushi. Like, some people, totally fine, not a big deal. Pineapple on an empty stomach, absolutely, like, no problem. I can get you back to baseline. And a lot of that is hormones, body composition, stress levels, sleep levels, all that kind of stuff. Because when we don't sleep very well, we are a little bit more insulin resistant the next day. We just simply can't process the same food that we could after a good night's sleep as we could after a poor night's sleep. There's so many different factors, right? So that's really what we think is super interesting, and what you can take as a hallmark of kind of like what is going on with my insulin, because frankly we don't have a continuous insulin monitor. You can't even get a fasting insulin on your like regular lab values. It's like an extra thing that you have to ask for. So that's our best
Don't
proxy.
we know it?
Yeah.
But what's the goal? So
Cool.
What are you recommending?
Yeah. The goal is that whatever you're doing, obviously exercise-induced spike is going to be a little bit different, but when you're taking in food, we want you to recover back to baseline generally within 2 hours. And we don't want that swing to go any higher than 30 points, like 30 basis points. We want to keep it low. We want to keep a small area under the curve, and we want to come back to where we started within, about 2 hours after eating. And when people aren't doing that, there's a lot of different ways to kind of hack that, tweak it, make some changes, figure out how to get you back to baseline and to minimize the
So like a
spike.
good example of this was, I think my like pre-meal glucose one time was like 82. I don't remember what the meal was, but after the meal I went up to like 121, and I was back down around in the low 80s within like an hour. So my recovery time was good. But I spiked above that 30-point mark. It was more like 40 points. And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, this is great. I was back down within an hour. I didn't even go much higher. Like, this is what they want you back under after 2 hours of your meal. Under 120 is what your doctor might say to you. Like, I barely even touched that number. And my dietitian was like, yeah, but you went up like 40 points. So we want to see that increase after a meal to be less than that. And I just remember that being a little bit of an aha moment where like, okay, so my baseline is fine. My body's doing a really good job controlling this level of glucose I'm hanging out in right now. But what's happening after a meal, I'm eating, and then my body isn't able to control that spike as well. And so what do I need to do to adjust that so I don't spike as high? Is that a difference in what I'm eating? Is that a few minute walk after I eat? Like, what is that? And that was really interesting to me, something I never would have considered, because, you just prick your finger 2 hours later and are you under 120? Great.
And frankly, if you were back to baseline at an hour, who knows where you were an hour after that?
Really
you could
low.
be like Sophia, and you could have been, far below. You could have been down in the 60s, right? And you would have had that reactive hypoglycemia thing. So, but I totally agree. And when we see that sort of high, narrow, thin spike, right, then we can look at like the composition of the meal and what did you eat first, right? If you were, were you eating your carb before your protein? Okay, let's swap it. Like, have the protein first, have your eggs first, and then have the fruit, or whatever the composition of the meal was. Let's see if we can kind of prime the pump, give your body something to work on, some fiber, some fat, something like that, and then hit it with the glucose, and that will help dampen the spike, right? Or maybe it's a portion thing, like, well, maybe a full banana isn't great, so let's work on like a half or 3/4 or something, or let's try a different fruit. Let's try like an apple and see how your body handles the
that
apple.
really rings true for this, spouse of mine who I'm not naming today. He is one of those like clock eaters on his plate. He's like, oh, like let's say dinner's rice, salmon, and broccoli. Salmon's his favorite part. So he's going to eat the broccoli and then the rice and then the salmon maybe. In a different scenario, he might start with the rice and then the broccoli and end with the salmon. Whereas I'm like, I want the perfect bite, or I want the food that should be hot to be hot. Like I don't want to eat cold eggs, but I don't mind eating cold toast. And so I'm going to eat the eggs first. I'm much more about the experience necessarily, like that perfect bite. He's like, I'm going to save the best for last. And we had this exact same conversation last week. I was like, if you're going to eat like a clock around your plate, we're going to change how you do it, and we're going to do protein, veg, and then the carbohydrate. And it's a really simple tweak, but it can be really powerful actually.
Yeah.
It really, and so listener, you're hearing how we're not talking about coming into your life with a sandblaster and like pulling out everything you've ever loved. And we're also not talking about making extreme changes. You can have the same dinner, eaten a slightly different portion of each thing and eaten in a different order, and have it impact your blood sugar in a beautiful way instead of one that makes you wake up sweating like what was happening with me.
Absolutely. I had a member that I was working with, and she loved going out to dinner with her husband. They went to the same Mexican restaurant every week. They loved it. And she was like, I don't want to give this up. Like, but can you help me? And I was like, absolutely. Let's work on it. Right. So instead of having the chips and queso at the start of her meal, she would save it for the end of her meal. Like she would start with the fajitas, like she would start with whatever the protein was that she was having. And she still got to eat her meal, and she still really got to go out with her husband every week. Same thing. But all of a sudden it was so much better. She was like, this is great. And then they ended up incorporating a little walk afterwards. It's all these like simple things that you're not taking anything away. You're adding and you're changing.
Amen. Amen. Okay, well, let's take our last break, and then we can talk about how to access Nutrisense and do our Yeah Girls.
I'm so excited to tell you that the PCOS app is sponsoring this podcast episode. The PCOS app is a one-stop shop for all things PCOS. It's also your meal guide and inspo all in one. If you love listening to me on this podcast and you feel like, hey, I want Caitlin to be in my ear every day encouraging me about how to manage my PCOS, then you have to go download the PCOS app. We have curated articles to answer questions that you have about PCOS. There are short snippets in the PCOS Answers podcast exclusive to the PCOS app. We also have recipes where I not only give you the recipe, but teach you within the recipe itself what I have done to make it more blood sugar and hormone supporting so that you can take your own recipes and make them more PCOS friendly. If you've been looking for the Google of all things PCOS, with the filter of compassion and expertise that you get from Caitlin Johnson, RD, then you have found it in the PCOS app. Head to your Android or Apple store today, download it, and let's hang out. And we're back. So, Catherine, tell us a little bit more about how somebody can get a CGM from Nutrisense. Any last tidbit or helpful hint along the way that maybe we didn't probe you and ask you about that maybe we missed, and then we'll do some celebration at the end.
Sure. I think, people hear about this, again, who knows where they are in that state of change, wherever they are in terms of making some changes. I would encourage everyone to at least go to our website. We have an awesome blog called The Journal, and we give so many great little bite-sized articles, all evidence-based because we are science nutrition nerds, that shows you how you can use this data based on so many health goals or whatever you are struggling with. I guarantee you can find something that you will relate to. So take a look at it, read through it, really see how this data can be helpful and powerful for you. And yes, you can find us on the web, nutrisense.io. You can find us on all the social media things. There's lots of videos of people putting CGMs on, so you can see that it's not scary and it's not painful.
I've got one on my Instagram page too. You can watch me put it on. I think
awesome. Yes.
Two different ones. One when I'm pregnant and one when I'm not.
I know. We're this episode's going to get Catherine in trouble as we're like, this is how to work the system. Just don't tell him.
La 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 la. I wasn't listening. So yes, you can find us on all the social media channels. Check us out, and feel free to ask questions. Right, like reach out. You guys obviously know the experience. You know the program. Feel free to ask. That's
one thing I would say. If you're going to take this leap and do it and invest in this, because it is an investment, is utilize that dietitian. Like they will check in with you and they will talk with you, but if you are asking them questions, they will answer your questions. So ask the questions. Ask a question about every single meal, every single day, and you will get the most out of this experience because a dietitian costs a lot of money to see, and your investment in a Nutrisense for a whole month is like paying for one dietitian visit. So take advantage of that and ask as many questions as you can.
Right now, live on the Food Freedom Fertility Podcast. Yes, you can go to, we'll put it in the show notes, of course. And then you can also, it's code TTC Nutritionist, all one word. TTC Nutritionist, all one word, will get you a discount on your Nutrisense. And it's worthwhile for some people. It is, I would say. And by now you can know. And listener, okay, I'm going to add one more thing. When I say for some people, sister, listen up. If you already know that you're going 7 hours without any food in your workday, if you already know that you are binging in the evenings because you have not been eating all day long, if you already know that you are eating from a vending machine and you need to bring your lunch more often, or plan a part in your day where you can get some lunch going or whatever, if you already know you're skipping breakfast, if you've already got all this stuff, don't go buy a Nutrisense, please. Take your efforts on doing these simple things that you already know you need to do. Okay, because you're going to put that Nutrisense on and you're going to talk to that dietitian. She's going to be like, oh yeah, quit going 7 hours without food in the middle of the day. Wow, what a revelation. You already know that. So if you're listening to this and you already know you're not having a very solid foundation and you need to put your energy into actually feeding your body something, into actually establishing any sort of healthy eating pattern in your life at all, please just do that. Put your money into that. Put your effort into that. Put your time into that. Not into a Nutrisense right now. Not into a CGM. But if you've done those things and you're ready to move forward, that's who this episode
All right,
is.
let's do our Yeah Girls. What do we want to celebrate today? Catherine, if you are not a Food Freedom Fertility listener, what we do at the end of every episode is a segment called the Yeah Girl, where we say something that we're celebrating, personal, professional, just something that we can say, yeah, girl, way to go. So we'll go first to give you a chance to think about what your Yeah Girl is. Sophia, do you want to go first or shall I?
My Yeah Girl is a little bit vulnerable and crazy. So after this session, I am going to go see my bodywork lady, Jamie. And we are doing some birth trauma processing, birth story listening. So this is a service that she provides where she kind of helps you tell the story of birth, whatever that may be for you, whether, if you're listening to this and you've had a pregnancy loss or you've had a baby in the past and the birth was, I don't know, you're just feeling some type of way about it. Like, for me, I wasn't like hospitalized and on death's door or like any horrible thing, but I still feel some traumatic feelings when it comes to birth. And so this is called a birth story listening. And I talk about what I experienced and she helps me sort of unpack it. And we're going to see how this goes. So I'm really not sure what to expect. I'm kind of nervous. And I will, if it goes well, and this is a valuable tool that I've found, we'll bring her on the show and she can talk about doing this this process. It's sort of a very traditional process. I don't want to say it's unconventional. It's not a Western medicine process. This is something that more is like what villagers and tribes would do. So I'm going to go check it out. And it's combined with body work, depending on if there's trauma in my body that's holding some of the emotions.
That's
so
super.
We'll see.
That's great.
That's my Yeah Girl, trying something
processing that stuff, get it out. Your body holds the score, as they say, and start the process of healing, especially if you ever might do that again. You might want to enter it a little bit more healed. I feel like I had a chance to do that after my second before my third, and it was really helpful. Yeah, girl. Yeah, girl.
Talking about that.
Okay, so my Yeah Girl this week Caitlin. Is I'll just do a really quick one. This week alone, 3 fine fertility babies were born. 3 I'm pregnant now babies were born, and 1 gal of the 3 that had a baby in this past week had gestational diabetes and was told she needed to go on insulin, she needed to do all these things, and we managed her blood sugars without those things, with like diet, exercise, strategic snacking and stuff, and she had a 7.5 pound baby, which if you're listening to this, it's a peanut. She didn't have
a little peanut.
Huge for gestational age baby that she needed to be scared I scared into
Squeeze
a
that thing
C-section
out,
because
yeah.
it's going to be so big or inducement. And she really advocated for herself. So this week
Get
was like,
out of here.
I just did so much
Holy
like dancing and
cannoli, that
happy. A
is-
couple of them I cried about. And it was just,
Caitlin,
it
you're-
was like, this is why I'm still doing this all work. So
Amen.
Really
amen,
exciting.
amen.
You guys are awesome. I wish I had listened to you guys when I was having my fertility issues and all that. So I just think you guys are doing a great job. Like, I was diagnosed
Thank
with
you.
PCOS, and it was like there was no need for. Anyways, it was like a whole thing. So my whole pregnancy journey.
But you're a
was kind
mother of 3 now.
Yeah, thank God
Way
for
to
modern
go.
medicine. But yes,
however
I
they
am.
came,
And
we're glad they're
anyways,
here.
That's a whole other episode.
Yes.
Exactly. So thank you.
Yeah.
Girl to you guys for doing this. And, I'm just so glad that you're helping people. So, I guess my yeah, girl moment, I'm going on vacation with my
Oh,
family.
that's a double yeah, girl.
And we always go up to New Hampshire, to a lake in New Hampshire. We're lake people. And I usually cook a lot, and then I get kind of stressed out for cooking. So I'm going to take the foot off the pedal in terms of meal
Cool.
planning, and just kind of let it ride. Let it ride. I'm going to let it ride, vacation mode, enjoy what comes
Awesome.
up and
Way
what
to
is
go.
available. So,
Yeah, girl.
Amen. All right.
So you love us, you like us, this is interesting. Give us a like, follow us, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode, and leave a written review. We'll see you next week.
Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to foodfreedomfertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's foodfreedomfertility.com. Thanks for listening.